The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. We've got all the latest and greatest NFL news, as well as our NFL picks. We'll talk college football playoffs and a little look back at our college football preview episode to talk about how we were right and maybe one or two that we missed as well. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up to me?
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast. I'm your host, Vince Stover. I'm joined by my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Snapping out of this cold streak for just a little bit here. So, but yeah, doing good. Lots of great sports on, that's for sure.
Yeah, it has been cold, no doubt about that one. But we hit close to 50 degrees today, and then we will hopefully hit 50 degrees tomorrow as well. So it is warming up at the very least here in Kentucky, and hopefully the rest of the snow will melt away here overnight or tomorrow as I've been working out in the cold these last couple days. And definitely ready for that to be over with. Let's see here, Dad. Before we get into our stuff, me and you are going to be in a showdown, fantasy football showdown this week in the Fantasy Football Championship in one of the leagues that we're in. You are predicted to beat me this week. So how do you feel about that?
Well, like I said, I came into this the number one seed, and I've had a real good year in this league. And again, I've got pretty solid lineup. So unless you get somebody that just goes crazy, I should be pretty tough to beat.
Well, I'm hoping that I have plenty of guys that just go crazy, but we will have to wait and see on that one how it all shakes down. I was in three leagues. All of them, I was in the playoffs. I lost two of them last week and won one. So I will. And actually, this was the league I had the worst year in as well. So we'll see how that one goes, I guess.
Yeah, you were the seventh seed going into it, and so you've upset a couple guys.
Yes. Yeah, I had a good go of it, I would say, needless to say. But nonetheless, it is fun to see kind of where we are and where we've gone, and hopefully we get there soon as well. I'm trying to figure out – Twitter has changed, and, Dad, you're not on Twitter.
No.
But I cannot figure out how to do something I want to do, which is very annoying. But hey, oh well, is what it is, I suppose. Oh, there we go. Finally figured it out. There we go. Trying to share it with some people and had a hard time figuring out how to do that. Thanks, Twitter, for changing things up on me. All right. By the way, you can follow us on Twitter at Sports Stove, also on Instagram at Sports Stove. You can find us on Facebook, the Sports Stove Podcast, and on YouTube. We welcome in our live viewers here on YouTube and Facebook actually tonight. And then for all our listeners listening later on your podcast platforms, thank you for tuning into this episode. Today's episode is presented by True Classic Tees. We'll share more about them in just a moment, but you can get your t-shirts there at trueclassic.com. Use the promo code BellyUpFantasy as we'll be partnering with Belly Up Fantasy Sports in baseball season. You could use that promo code BellyUpFantasy, get 25% off your purchase. Dad, let's get into the NFL. There are plenty of things to talk about in the NFL, and let's start it off with Derek Carr. Announcement came out earlier today. Derek Carr is getting benched for Jarrett Stidham, someone who has never started a game in the NFL. And what does this mean? I mean, it seems to say that the Derek Carr era in Las Vegas is over. What do you make of this?
Well, I mean, it could mean that. Again, I wonder if there's going to be a coaching change here at the end of the year. And if there is, then maybe that wouldn't be the end for Derek Carr. I don't know. But yeah, it's been surprising. Everyone thought, when he got Devontae Adams, he would have a great year, and he is not. A little surprised about the benching at this point. I guess, if they want to get a look at Stidham, but I don't think he's the guy they're probably counting on for the future either. So, but Las Vegas has kind of had problems all year, and I think this would show some of their dysfunction.
Yeah, I made a prediction today that just simply said Derek Carr starting quarterback for the Titans next season. That's where I predict he ends up. In the article I wrote this week, I did a top 10 mock draft for 2023 NFL draft. And one of the things I said about the Raiders is we don't know. We don't know who the coach is going to be. Will McDaniels stay? If he's still there, then that leaves more questions about what they would do. If they're in the top 10, maybe they would draft a quarterback. But I don't think there's a quarterback in that 8, 9, 10, 11 range that's worth drafting at that point. So then what do you do? I think Derek Carr moves on from the Raiders. It's kind of been a tumultuous relationship for quite some time now. And they signed him to the extension, but it's one of those things where they signed him, just didn't feel like they absolutely loved him. And now if he gets waived, they can save a little bit of money, but he's got to be waived pretty much right after the Super Bowl. Where does he end up? There's plenty of teams that need a quarterback. New Orleans, guys that need a quarterback that aren't drafting in the top 2 or 3 picks. So New Orleans would be one of those. I think Tennessee would be in the market. I think that's a great fit for him at Tennessee because he can come in and play, and they can still give more time for Malik Willis to grow in that backup role. So I'm looking at those kinds of teams that could need a quarterback. But what about Devontae Adams? He signed with Vegas. One of the reasons why is because he liked Derek Carr. So what happens now if they move on from Derek Carr? Does Devontae Adams stick around, or does he say, I want out?
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, he got the money, but yeah, he wanted to go be with Derek Carr. So it's again, I think Adams has had a pretty good year, as far as his stats and that is concerned. But yeah, it's going to really be a mess there, depending on what they do. And I think if they keep McDaniel, it'll be more of a mess. I think if they get somebody new, then they can lend some direction and see where they're at. But you're right, might be right. Carr may be gone, and I would think there'd be plenty of teams that would be in the market to give him a chance, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting quarterback offseason for sure. Teams like New York, it seems like Daniel Jones has done enough to hold on to that job, but you could make an upgrade in New York. The Jets need a quarterback. There would be an upgrade there as well. There's plenty of teams out there that maybe would not have the ability to draft a guy that can step in immediately this next year, but they could trade for Derek Carr. And my guess is they can get him pretty cheap at this point. And the Raiders will probably have to pay some of his contract as well, possibly, with all that. Speaking of quarterbacks, Dad, Tua Tagovailoa, who proved himself to be an average quarterback last week. He had his 3rd concussion of the season. What does this say about the future for Tua? I mean, legitimately, you have to be concerned about this guy's health.
Yes, I think it puts Miami in a tough spot, because I think they're going to have to either get some answers and feel like he'll be okay going forward. But when you're talking about concussions, that's a serious thing, both for him and, as far as the team is concerned. So, again, I think, they'll have to decide fairly quickly here, but they may be in the market looking for another quarterback. And that could be a trade with somebody. That could be somebody like Derek Carr or whatever from there. But, I think Tua's injury thing now has, they're going to have to address that, and probably going to either make a change or going to have another option in the fold. And it'll be interesting to see how this goes during the year, because Miami doesn't look like they've handled this situation right. Doesn't look like they did the first time. And now they come out, 2 days after the game saying, oh, yeah, he had a concussion on Sunday. So there's going to be some real question, I think, from the NFL and the Players Association about how this has been handled.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because they showed the play. It looks like in the third quarter, he hit his head on the ground. Everyone's assuming that's when the concussion happened. And maybe he was able to hide it, and it was not really the team's fault this time like it was the previous time. But 3 concussions in one season from a quarterback. And remember, coming in, the concern was his hip. He had that nasty injury in college.
Yeah.
There was that concern. This has nothing to do with that. This is the head, completely different thing. But it definitely has to make you step back and go, can he sustain a career in the NFL? Because he's going to get hit, no doubt, moving forward. So, maybe if they sit him the rest of this season, which I don't know that they would do, and give him the whole offseason and get him going right, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. But it is concerning. I'm not the biggest Tua fan, but you don't want to see a guy have a short career because of injuries, especially brain injuries. So hopefully they get this figured out and he can stay safe as well. He will sit out this week. Do you think they should sit him out the rest of the season? If they lose this week, they're pretty much out of the playoffs. So not completely out, but it would tend that way.
I think from a health standpoint, yes, they probably should. And like I said, with the questions that are going to be raised about the team, I think that would be the right move too. And it's probably the safer thing for Tua at this point. So I would think the high road for sure with Miami would be, to set him out. Even though that may be a question, with still in the hunt in the playoffs. But I think that might be the smart thing to do.
Yeah, from a PR standpoint, it makes sense. As long as they have a shot at the playoffs, he gives them the best shot to win over Teddy Bridgewater, although I don't think there's that big of a drop-off, and we'll talk about that when we get to our pick sixes. But at the end of the day, this is a sticky situation, and we'll continue to monitor it and see how it shakes down. A team that undoubtedly needs a quarterback is the Houston Texans. Right now, they hold the number 1 spot in the draft, but they could blow it, and they could end up with the number 2 spot. Should Houston, I know we've talked about this before, but now we're 2 games left in the season. Should Houston try to secure that number 1 overall pick, or should they throw it to the wind and just go out and play football?
I think you should go out and play football. I mean, I don't see the idea. I don't see how it works to tell players, hey, we're not going to win this one. We don't want to win this one. I just don't see how that can help. Now, there might come up some certain, decisions in the game, some things that, could be made a certain way, wouldn't be throwing the game, but, might not be doing everything you could, to win. But I don't see how you can tell a team, hey, we don't want to win this one from there. And again, the idea of predicting the draft at this point, until you go through the combines, until you go through everything, we know that players change rankings quite a bit. So, who knows how many good quarterbacks there could be in the fold here.
But here's my deal. At the beginning of the season, I don't think anybody should try to tank. 2 games left in the season. When you have the possibility to lose out on the number 1 overall draft pick, I think the smart thing to do is say, for the team. Now, listen, you can't tell the players this, but it's about the personnel you put on the field and decision-making during the game. We saw the Eagles do this not too long ago. The deal is, you need that number 1 spot. You want to pick your player, the player you want the most. And the only way you can for sure get that is if you're the number 1 overall pick. If someone else, I think Chicago's the next one in place, they may not take a quarterback, but they could trade out of that number 1 spot, and another team could move in and take the quarterback you want. You need the number 1 overall pick. It's 2 games. All you got to do is lose one of them. It's 2 games. Just go out and lose it. Figure out a way to, take it down to the end and go for 2. If you're going to take if you're down by 1, go for 2 and take a knee. I mean, do something that just says we got to lock this in, because it could be the difference between Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. I mean, that's what happened to the Jets. They had the number 1 draft pick and they threw it away, and that's not good. So you got to get the number 1 draft pick. Like I said, I'm not all for tanking an entire year, but when you're at this point in the season and it's in grasp, you need to go out and get that number 1 draft pick, especially when you need a quarterback as badly as Houston does. Teams oftentimes tank for players, but there's a head coach waiting out there for teams that want to win games. He's a Super Bowl winning head coach, and supposedly he's partnered with one of the best defensive minds in football, Sean Payton, looking for a job. The rumors have swirled for a while now that the Los Angeles Chargers are a landing spot if they fire their coach. Now they're saying New Orleans. It might be a return to New Orleans. I don't understand that one. But that being said, what's the best fit for Sean Payton?
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see there. Denver is available now. I mean, if he wants to go back, I would think he'll have his choice, and I'm not sure where he wants to make his decision at. Is it based on players? Is it based on money? Is it based on where to live? There are a lot of things that he could let factor in. I don't know. It would be strange for him to go back to New Orleans. That wouldn't make a lot of sense why he left. But I don't know. But if he decides he wants to come back, then who is it he partnered with, you said?
Vic Fangio.
That's right. I heard that.
Yeah, and they're saying if he goes back to New Orleans, he could be pairing with Tom Brady. I'm out on Tom Brady. I don't think he's got it anymore. I don't think he can take a team on his shoulders. He needs a lot of weapons. And by the way, he has a lot of weapons and Tampa. So I'm not sure that New Orleans is a better fit for Tom Brady. And I just don't see that pairing making a whole lot of sense. I look at Denver and I say, okay, they've got a quarterback who's had a horrible year. They've got a quarterback. They've got good receivers. They've got good running backs. They've got a really good defense. That one makes a lot of sense. Now, New Orleans has a good defense too. I think Arizona, Dad, could be a great fit for Sean Payton. I think Cliff Kingsbury gets fired at the end of this year. You go into that team with a loaded offense, an okay defense. It's a young defense as well. And you get to live in Phoenix, which a lot of people love. So I don't know. I think Arizona is kind of the place I'm leaning right now because I'm not sure the Chargers will have an open job. I would go there first. But I think Arizona is where I'm leading, and then Denver after that. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking on Sean Payton.
Yeah, speaking about head coaches, I was thinking about this week when you think about the Denver job with the quarterback staying there, Russell Wilson. I was trying to think, well, who would have connections there? And Dan Quinn, wasn't he at Seattle for a long time with the defense there? And he was a guy very much in the hunt for a head coach job, and then he decided to stay at Dallas. And just thinking about it, I thought, boy, that might make a lot of sense. So be interesting to see how the carousel goes.
Another name that was in the head coaching interviews last year, Darrell Bevell. He worked with Russell Wilson in Seattle as the offensive coordinator. Of course, he has a long history in the NFL with Brett Favre and with Matt Hasselbeck and with the guys there as well. So Darrell Bevell's a guy, no head coaching experience in the NFL, but he's been around a long time and respected. There's going to be a lot of names pop up, and it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go. And remember, Peyton Manning is involved with Denver as well. So there's a lot of different options out there, and I'm sure they'll look for the right fits to go out there as well. I think Russell Wilson bounces back next year. Personally,
yes.
This has been a wacky year for sure there. Let's take a look at the playoff situation right now. Almost all the spots are filled up. Just a couple remain. Buffalo, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Kansas City, and the Chargers have all locked up a spot in the playoffs. We're still waiting on the AFC South winner. Currently, Jacksonville and Tennessee, both at 7 and 8. They'll play each other in Week 18, so that'll get solved there, if not before. Then you've got Miami, New England, the Jets, and Pittsburgh all vying for that last spot there as well. Miami's down a quarterback, so that makes it harder for them. The Jets are going back to the Great White Hope and Mike White. And New England, well, they've been average so far this season. Any chance of Pittsburgh or Tennessee or Jacksonville, whoever loses out that one, any chance they slip into the playoffs, or is it going to be somebody from the AFC East?
Well, we'll see after this week, depending who wins and, who loses. If people stay in the hunt, then yes, Tennessee, Jacksonville, whoever doesn't win that one, or Pittsburgh could stay in it. Miami, I think they're the ones that are in that spot right now, so they could hold it, but don't know that they will. New England's been hard to figure. I mean, in some ways you say they're probably the front runners. On the other hand, they may lose their last 2 games. So it's just, it'll be interesting to see where that last spot goes over there.
Yeah, Miami's in the driver's seat. A win this week would definitely go a long way in getting them there. In the NFC, it's Philadelphia, Minnesota, San Francisco, currently Tampa. That's crazy. Dallas is in. Tampa's not officially in yet. They still have to win. So only 4 teams in the NFC is clinched. Tampa, New York, and Washington are the other 3 teams currently in, with Seattle, Detroit, and Green Bay nipping on their heels. Let's start with the the NFC South, because you have Tampa in the lead, but they're only a game up on Carolina, and guess what? They get to play each other. Is Carolina or New Orleans going to find a way into the playoffs? I mean, I cannot believe we're even discussing this option, but yet here we sit 2 weeks to go in the season, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do not have it locked up in the South.
No, and Tampa's really kind of lucky there where they're at. They very easily could have lost that game and a couple others.
Right.
I don't know. New Orleans has a tough game this week with Philadelphia. So that'll be a tough one there for them. I'm not sure who Carolina plays this weekend.
Tampa.
That'd be the craziest thing in the world if Carolina, won that division. Is Atlanta technically out of it?
Yes, no, they're out. Yeah, they're out. Atlanta's out. Carolina plays Tampa this week. So Sam Darnold could be the savior. Wilkes could be the savior. Carolina, that would be crazy. They trade away Christian McCaffrey. They cut Baker Mayfield. They could make the playoffs, and winning this week would take them and put them in the driver's seat to make the playoffs. They play the Saints next week. So that's an interesting round. Of course, remember they beat the Lions last week, and then they beat the Seahawks 3 weeks ago. So, I mean, they've beat some interesting teams that kind of put them in the driver's seat there as well. But Tampa, a game up on everybody, can still win that out. Now, as far as the wild card goes, the Giants and the Commanders are the other teams that are kind of control their own destiny to some way. The Giants are playing the Colts this week and the Eagles in Week 18. The Eagles probably will have nothing to play for. So they might have benched their guys by then. The Commanders play the Browns this week and the Cowboys in week number 18. So that's an interesting flow of things. Then again, you got Detroit and Green Bay hanging out there as well. They play each other in week 18. The Packers have Minnesota this week, who you've called out as the biggest frauds in the NFL. We'll see a little bit more about them this week as well. Any thoughts on how the playoff race shakes out in the NFC?
Well, like I said, the concerning thing, I guess, like I said, from a Packer fan standpoint, we're looking to see. We're all heard Aaron Rodgers say we're all Browns fans this weekend, because if Washington loses and we can win out, then we can be in. New York would have to lose twice, and you wouldn't think they'd lose to Indianapolis, but you don't quite know what they're going to do either. The last game of the year is what you wonder about. Philadelphia and Dallas, are they going to have anything to play for, and how will they handle it? Now, they are division games, so I almost can't believe Dallas playing Washington and not worrying about not winning. And Philadelphia has been very solid. So, even with Minshew and stuff, the Giants can have a tough time there. So again, they're in the driver's seat if they win, or again, you get the right other teams to lose. Detroit's got Chicago this week. That'll be an interesting game. Of course, Green Bay, will have to take care of things in Minnesota. Again, we are at home. The next two games are at home, so that's a little bit of an advantage there. But again, it may be that last week people are still vying for positions in the playoffs. But it's for the NFL, it's going to be great, because it's coming down the last 2 weeks, are going to mean things, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at needing help from Philadelphia and Dallas. Gardner Minshew and Cooper Rush, they're not the worst options. We've seen Cooper Rush win football games this year for Dallas. So, I mean, it is what it is, I suppose. Let's get into our picks for this week, Dad. Again, we pick 6 games each week. We pick all the primetime games, Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night, and then 3 games of our choice. And, Dad, I felt like the 3 games of our choice, this was the easiest week to pick so far. I think I've got locks this week, so we'll see how that shakes out. But let's start with Thursday night football. The Dallas Cowboys travel to Nashville. 9.5-point favorites on the road, Dallas is. Tennessee's going through some interesting things right now. Derrick Henry, I think, is questionable going into the game as well. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this one. 9.5 is a lot of points, but Tennessee's been bad.
Yeah, I think 9.5 is too many points. So I'm going to go with Tennessee on this one. Dallas could very easily win this, but 9.5, that's quite a bit. You never know what Titan team is going to show up. You never know what Cowboy team is going to show up. So with 9.5 worries me, so I'll stay with Tennessee.
What I saw out of Malik Willis, I'm not worried at all. So I'm going to go Dallas, 9.5 points over Tennessee this week. Sunday night is an interesting matchup. Baltimore at home, 3.5-point favorites over Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's trying to hold on to playoff hopes. Baltimore trying to look decent. 3.5 points, Baltimore at home. Which way you going?
I go with Baltimore because it is at home. And again, with 3.5 points, I've kind of liked Pittsburgh all year. I like what they've done and tried to make some moves. But Baltimore, again, at one time, we thought they were going to be one of the dominant teams maybe in the AFC. And they could get hot here and make a run. So 3.5 and being at home, I'll go with Baltimore.
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go Pittsburgh with the upset and staying in the playoff hopes there as well. I'll go Pittsburgh plus 3.5 on that one. Monday Night Football in Cincinnati. Buffalo, a 1.5-point favorite on the road. These teams fighting for the number 1 seed in the AFC. Which way do you go with this one?
Yeah, this one's really a toss-up. But since the game is in the jungle here right down the road, I'll go with Cincinnati. I think maybe they can get the number 1 seed here. Again, Buffalo, and sometimes Buffalo, boy, they look unbeatable, so you never know what's going to happen with that. But I'm going to go with the Bengals on this one.
I'm all in on the Bengals. I've said it several times throughout this season. Give me Joey B. I'll take the Bengals plus 1.5 at home against Buffalo. It should be a really good game. But I think Buffalo's really good. I think Buffalo, Kansas City, and Cincinnati are all in the same category. But I'm going to go Cincinnati in this game as well. All right. Game number 4. Who are you picking this week? Game number 4.
Well, it's funny. You said you felt like the other three games, these were easy ones to pick, and I thought they were all hard. It was hard for me to come up with them, so we'll see. But I'm going to take Jacksonville over Houston, 4.5 points. Jacksonville needs to win. Houston is not good, even though it's at Houston, and I think Jacksonville is headed in the right direction, and so I'm going to go Jacksonville, even though it's 4.5.
I almost picked this game, but I felt like there were three better picks this week. I would be with you in the fact that I think Jacksonville, they need this game, and Houston needs to lose this game, whether or not anyone else believes that. So, yeah, I think Jacksonville probably wins this game too, but I'm not going to pick this one for my pick six, Dad. I'm going to get on the Baker train. The Los Angeles Rams are 6.5-point underdogs at home, but also on the road. They're playing the Chargers. They play in the same stadium. There will be more Rams fans there than Charger fans. The Chargers have locked up their playoff spot, so their urgency might be tapered down a little bit. The Rams, on the other hand, they're kind of riding a high right now. I don't know that the Rams win this game, but from what I've seen from the Chargers, the Rams can stay in this game. So I'll take the Rams at plus 6.5. In the Battle of Los Angeles this week. Who is your fifth game of the week?
That Rams-Chargers game, I almost picked that, but again, because the Baker is going in the right direction, but I think Chargers are the better team, so I stayed away from that. My fifth game will be a hot team, San Francisco, against a cold team, Las Vegas, even 5.5. It's at Las Vegas, but I believe the Niners are ready to play.
I'm 100% with you on this one. This one was the easiest one of them all to pick. Jared Stidham starting for Las Vegas. Give me San Francisco all day, every day, minus 5.5. I picked that one as well for my fifth game this week. Game number 6. Who'd you go with?
This one, boy, I was really struggling to see which game to pick, so I thought I'm going to go with a great game here, two teams. It really doesn't matter, but I'm going to take the Atlanta-Arizona game, and Atlanta's at home, 3.5, and I'll pick Atlanta.
Okay. Colt McCoy starting for Arizona. Lots of turmoil there. J.J. Watt announced he's retiring after the season, but he's on the road anyhow. That's a tough game. I stayed away from that one. My last pick, Dad, give me Teddy Bridgewater and the Miami Dolphins plus 2.5. Trying to stay ahead in the playoff race against New England on the road, division game. Surely Teddy B can't pull this one off, but I believe. And as much as I do not like Tua, I love me some Teddy Bridgewater. So I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins. I think there is so little drop-off between Tua and Teddy, and maybe Teddy actually gives them the advantage in this game. So give me the Dolphins plus 2.5 at Foxborough and the New England Patriots. Any thoughts on that game?
Well, it's in New England in January. I don't know. I'd go with the Patriots on this one.
Well, you're allowed to be wrong.
That's right.
Let's talk through the rest of the games this weekend. Washington at home versus Cleveland. Washington 2.5-point favorites. Dad, we need Washington to lose, so surely Cleveland's going to help us out, right?
They very easily could. We're waiting for Deshaun Watson to have his big game. This would be a great time to have it. So I've a lot of Browns fans up here in Ohio, and I've talked to a lot of them, and they say they'll help us out. So go Cleveland. That's all I can say. Yeah,
Carson Wentz getting the start in Washington back at the helm.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing for the Browns fans. New York Giants at home, 4.5-point favorites over Indianapolis. They are benching Matt Ryan, going with Nick Foles still. And I stayed away from this one, Dad, because I still don't know what we're going to get out of the Giants. But 4.5 points, which way are you going with that one?
Yeah, I'm afraid the Giants are the better team here. But again, Indianapolis, you never know. This will get real interesting if the Giants lose this game.
Right.
Because if they lose 2, then all of a sudden that puts us back in it. But I'd love to see the Colts win, but I don't know. And like I said, the Giants have looked pretty good this year, but then they've struggled here in the last little bit. So you never know quite what you're going to get. And I would think the Giants will win this, but you don't know.
Denver fired their head coach. They go in as 13.5-point underdogs to Kansas City this week. Does the coaching change spark some life into Denver, or do we expect Kansas City? I expect Kansas City to still win this one by at least 13.5 points. Which way do you lean on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that you sometimes a team, get rid of your coach, it can be a spark, but I don't think it'll be that big a spark. I think Kansas City's a very good team, and even though this is a big division rivalry game in a lot of ways, I think Kansas City should handle this even with the big point spread.
Tampa and Carolina playing for the division. Tampa, a 2.5-point favorite at home. Which way do you go with this one?
I mean, I'd love to see Carolina win, but being it's at home, I'll go with Tampa.
I'm going to go upset on that one. I say Carolina keeps it interesting. Detroit and Chicago. Detroit is the home favorite, 5.5 points. Chicago's not been good. They're playing for a top 2 draft pick. Which way do you go with this one?
Detroit ought to win, but you wonder what happened to them last week. So how's that going to affect their psyche? Chicago, again, as you know, I have nothing good really to say about the Bears. They have played a couple people tough, and this is a division game. So the Lions will have to be ready to play, no doubt about it. But I would think the Lions will win.
Yeah, I agree. Philadelphia, 6.5-point favorites at home against New Orleans. That one I felt like was probably a safe pick as well. I didn't go with that one because the other picks were easier, but I think Philadelphia beats New Orleans. How about you?
I think they will. Again, this would help the Packers from what I understand if New Orleans won, because then the game next week, Philadelphia would need to win potentially. To get the number 1 seed. But I would think Philadelphia will handle this.
The Jets, the Great White Hope, is 2.5-point favorite on the road in Seattle against Geno Smith. Jets or Seahawks?
I'm going to go with the Jets. I don't think they're dead yet. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. But, Seattle surprised me this year, but they've kind of looked like what you thought Seattle would here lately. So I'll go with the Jets and the Great White Hope on this one.
Green Bay and Minnesota, the Packers are at home. They're 3.5-point favorites, which actually surprises me. I'm not going to lie. I've got a bad feeling about this one. I hope I'm wrong. But this almost feels like a Justin Jefferson going off for 375 yards or something like that going on. Maybe fake mooning the crowd like Randy Moss did. I don't know. I know you want the Packers to win. Do you think they will?
I think they will. I didn't pick the game just because of 3.5. I can see a Mason Crosby field goal winning this one. I think the Packers are playing better. Now, they do have some injuries, and we don't know kind of where that's going to be yet here. And the weather's not going to be extremely cold, even though it will be January there in Green Bay. Green Bay needs to win this, and I think they will. I think they've played better. And Minnesota's been up and down. Again, to me, I've always said Minnesota's been the luckiest team I've ever seen, and maybe they will be again this week, but maybe it'll catch up with them. Being it's on the road at Green Bay, I think we've got a good chance at this one.
Well, I hope so. Like I said, I don't have a great feeling about it, but it's just a feeling, so who knows, right? Yeah, feelings aren't always right. So it is what it is. All right, that's our NFL talk this week. We're going to cut away for a quick break and then come back and talk college football. Dad, why don't you tell the fine folks about our partners at TrueClassic.com?
Yes, we're happy to be partnering with True Classic Tees. They've been making T-shirts for over 2 million men that are comfortable, affordable, super soft, and they actually fit. Sometimes, wearing a T-shirt can be kind of frustrating because, unfortunately, we're not all perfect shape. And you get T-shirts, and they can be too big, they can be too boxy, they can be too tight in certain areas. But True Classic Tees has kind of solved that problem, and they do it at an affordable price. Very comfortable T-shirt, again, that you can enjoy wearing. So check it out, trueclassic.com, and again, use the code BellyUpFantasy. You get 25% off. That is a limited time offer. So check it out. They do look great. True Classic Tees, glad to have them partnering with the Sports Stove Podcast.
Here's what's cooking on the Sports Stove family of podcasts. Hey, everybody, I'm Vince Stover, host of the Sports Stove Podcast, and just want to give you some insight on what is ahead and what is going on within the Sports Stove world. We now have 3 podcasts for you to listen to. It's all under the umbrella of the Sports Stove Podcast. We have the Sports Stove Podcast, the original show, and that's just me and my dad. We're talking all things sports, just like we would riding in the car, listening to Sports Talk Radio. We just give it to you, talking NFL, Major League Baseball, college football, college basketball, all things sports. Me and Dad bring that to you each week. Then we also have the Sports Stove Local Hour, which covers Eastern Kentucky University sports, where we talk all things EKU with student athletes, coaches, and administration all come on to talk about everything that's going on inside the world of EKU sports, focused heavily on football, men's and women's basketball, and some EKU baseball as well. And then thirdly, we're introducing the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show, where every week myself and a guest will bring you all the latest and greatest fantasy baseball news and updates. We'll give you advice, opinions, as well as talk Major League Baseball news throughout the year as well. So make sure you stay tuned for all these great episodes. You can subscribe to the Sports Stove Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search for the Sports Stove Podcast, and you'll find us there. That's what's cooking on the Sports Stove family of podcasts. Welcome back in. And again, a lot of great content coming for you in the new year. We're almost to the new year. Before we get there, we got to look back real quick. College football. And, Dad, I wanted to go back and look at our predictions for the college football season and kind of look at some of the over-unders that we picked, win totals, and maybe even some of our categorization of these teams as well. Let's start with the SEC. Were there any teams in the SEC that you are really proud of your pick of going over or under on their win totals? I'll start to give you a chance to kind of look at it. I said over Tennessee, 7.5. I had them finishing second in the SEC East to Georgia. So I'm proud of that one. And then I also had under 8.5 for Kentucky. And they are at they're right at, let's see here. They got it. They're at 8-4. I'm sorry. They're at, I missed it somewhere in there. 8-4, 7-4. So I'm gonna get that one as well. So right on Tennessee and Kentucky, and then I'm looking to see if I was wrong on anybody. Auburn, by the way, 6.5 on Auburn. I said under. Excuse me, 6 on Auburn. I said under on that one as well. So I feel like the SEC I had a pretty good grasp on, with the exception of maybe Texas A&M. I was way off on that one.
Yes, I'd agree with you. That was the one that I missed on. And I missed on LSU, too. I had them going under 7, and they ended up having a better year. Did have Mississippi State up, and they ended up having a good year there. Of course, I think we both had South Carolina up over 6, and they ended up having a good year. I did have Florida under on 7, and Florida did have a tough year, even though they did get bowl eligible. So, yeah, we neither one of us were too far off on the SEC. Outside of the Vanderbilt category, that didn't work out at all. So,
hey, congrats to Vandy. Great year. I had over 2.5 for Vanderbilt, by the way. And I said that maybe next year I'll move them up to the future category. They look like they could be there. National championship contenders, I only had 2, Bama and Georgia. And Georgia obviously still in the hunt, Bama not. But close enough. They were still contenders to a degree this year as well there. Do you have who you had in the national championship contender?
Yeah, I had Alabama and Georgia same way.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the ACC. I'm sure I missed some on this one. I had Clemson going over 10.5. I guess if they win on Saturday, then or this week, then they'll hit that. I'm not sure if that counts or not. Let's see here. Other teams though that I was in on Syracuse. I was over. No, I'm sorry. I missed on Syracuse. I was under on Syracuse. I was also under on Louisville, 6 wins, and they just squeaked it out to 7 wins. So the ACC, I was a little bit off on. I was over for Miami. They didn't hit the over. I pretty much missed everybody, I think, on this one. So the ACC, I had to take a back seat on because I didn't do well here.
Yeah, I didn't do real well on any of that either. I had Pittsburgh. I did pick them being under as they were higher ranked, and that did turn out that way. Carolina went down a little bit. Florida State was better than I thought there. So, but yeah, otherwise, I didn't hit that one just right from there. So
yeah, my best ACC picks were Wake Forest under and Florida State over. Hit both of those, but the other ones not so much.
There you go.
Let's see here. Big Ten is where we'll go next. This was an interesting one because of the Michigan. I went under 9.5 on Michigan. Obviously, I was wrong on that one. I did go over on Ohio State's 11, and they're sitting at it right now. So that one's an interesting spot. Outside of that one, Purdue. I was over on Purdue. They only had 4. Let's see, where were they at? They were at 7, excuse me. So that one hit, which was good. And then Northwestern, I was way off on that one. 0 wins for them. I went over 3.5. But I think we were both higher on Illinois going over. They definitely went over 4.5 on that one.
Yes, yeah, I went over on that one. Also, I had Minnesota being over 7.5, and Minnesota ended up with a pretty good year. I don't know if they hit that.
They did.
Penn State had a good year. Also, I had them over from there too. I had Michigan State, and then they did not do well. And Iowa struggled, and of course Wisconsin struggled. I thought they would be really good, and that didn't. Of course they got rid of their coach, so that all changed.
I was under on Wisconsin as well, so that's nice to hit some every now and then, right? Pac-12, I was all in on USC. They stuck around all year and made it a show as well. So that one I was in on and was correct on over there. Utah, I was over, and they hit 9. The 9 was their number as well. But I was down on Oregon this year. I said under 9. Well, they're right at 9 also. So outside of that one, I don't know. Again, Oregon State, I was over. That was correct. So there's a few here that I hit, but I was in on USC, and I'm proud of the way that one turned out.
Yeah, no, I was about the same as you on that. I did have over on Oregon there, and I thought Utah would do well. Utah, UCLA, and USC, and they all did have pretty good years from there. But yeah, didn't hit all of them on that one for sure.
Big 12, I was over on Kansas, so I'll take the victory lap on that one. They got way over 2.5 wins. I was under on TCU, and well, I was wrong on that one, as TCU had a number of 6.5 coming into the season. Baylor, I went over on 8 wins. They did not hit that. And then Oklahoma, I went under on Oklahoma. I was pretty staunch. This was not going to be a great year for them. It turned out to not be a great year, but I think they're still on the rise and good things happening. Anything from the Big 12 that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I missed the top 2 with Baylor and OU there. From there, definitely fell off. I did have Kansas State over, and I think they ended up being respectable in the year. But yeah, like I said, missed TCU, and I had Kansas over 2.5, but didn't have Kansas ranked that high at all. So they was probably the biggest surprise. Well, TCU, I guess, would have to be the biggest surprise because they're in the national championship tournament. But Kansas was quite the surprise also. Really, all the teams in the Big 12, a lot of them did better than expected. So.
Yeah, they did. Kansas, by the way, losing in their bowl game, Liberty Bowl against Arkansas right now. Oregon and North Carolina all knotted up at 7 in the first quarter as of this recording. Duke with a big blowout of UCF, Ole Miss, and Texas Tech about to kick off. Let's see here. Outside of that, we got some big games coming up, though, but let's talk about the college football playoffs that are coming up on Saturday. I guess let's start off with Ohio State and Georgia. They're the 8 o'clock kickoff in the Peach Bowl. Georgia, they're the number 1 team in the nation, but Ohio State's no kickover. I think Georgia's still a really good football team, and I don't want to see Ohio State and Michigan in the championship game, so I'll pick Georgia. How about you?
Georgia has been very solid. It is hard to repeat, but I think they will be ready to play. Ohio State is good, so you never know from there. Now, again, living in this part of the country, Ohio State and Michigan would be an absolute dream in the national championship. It would be like nothing else has ever been, so that would be a lot of fun. But Georgia's very, very good. Again, I hope it'll be a good game. Close game, and I think Ohio State could pull it out, but Georgia's been proved that they're a great team all year, so I would think they'll be ready to play.
Georgia 6.5-point favorites in that game. Michigan number 2 versus TCU number 3. Michigan 7.5-point favorites in the Fiesta Bowl. Undefeated Michigan versus 12-1 TCU. Which team is more tested coming into this game? I kind of feel like it's TCU. What about you?
I would agree with that. Yeah, with TCU, and you see some of the games, that Michigan won. You would think Michigan would be poised and ready for this, but if one of these two games somebody's going to overlook somebody, TCU gets up in this game, it could really be interesting, no doubt about it. I think they would need to do that, though. They'll need to jump on Michigan, get ahead, and put the pressure on, and then it'll be an interesting ball game.
Yeah, that's the deal. They both average 40 points a game, but the Michigan defense has held teams to 14 less points. So the Michigan defense is the key in this game. If TCU can put points up, they win this game. But if Michigan defense wins out, then obviously the Wolverines have the upper hand, and we could be seeing the Wolverines in the championship game. Although I'd love nothing more than to be able to laugh at my Michigan friends and see what will happen from there. So an interesting game definitely coming up. Of course, Tennessee-Clemson, Dads, on Friday. Should be a fun game. Clemson has moved on to a new quarterback, and big game for them. Tennessee obviously down their star quarterback. Joe Milton will be getting the snaps there at Tennessee. So I think Clemson's probably the better team overall, just considering the quarterback situation. But should be a fun game there. Any other bowl games that you're really intrigued by that are coming up this week?
No, I mean, the Tennessee Clemson game, I think, is the biggest one, and then you got the national championship game. So, no, I don't think there's a lot more, a lot more real close ones there from that standpoint.
Two great teams for the Orange Bowl, Clemson and Tennessee, both orange-colored universities. Maybe Syracuse could have snuck in there, but nonetheless, should be a fun matchup. And next week, we'll be talking about who won the playoffs and the national championship and everything coming up there as well. I want to let people know we got a big local hour coming up. It'll drop on Thursday night, Friday morning. Head basketball coach at EKU, A.W. Hamilton, will be joining me. And center Isaiah Cozart, he was at Western Kentucky, transferred to Eastern Kentucky. He'll be joining the show as well. We'll be talking EKU basketball and ASUN basketball as conference play starts on Saturday for the ASUN conference. So if you like basketball, tune in to that episode. It'll be a lot of fun. A-Dub is a lot of fun to talk to, Coach Hamilton. So looking forward to having him back on the show as well. Want to remind everybody, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sports Stove. Make sure you visit trueclassic.com and at checkout, put in the promo code BellyUpFantasy, 25% off your purchase there as well. Dad, anything else that you want to add?
No, I don't think so. We've had a big show, filled up the time here tonight. Would like to congratulations to the MTSU Blue Raiders. They did win their bowl game on the Hawaii Bowl. And congratulations, Coach Stockstill and the guys there did well. And, beside everything we talked about tonight, a lot of exciting college basketball coming up because everybody's pretty much in the conference season now. Yep. And I saw where Tennessee won tonight over our old friend Kermit Davis at Ole Miss. And I think a lot of these good conferences going to be quite a year. A lot of good competition in basketball there in the Big Ten, SEC, and several.
Definitely a lot of exciting stuff going on. Baseball news still trickling down as well, but we didn't have time to talk about that tonight. But we'll continue to cover all the latest and greatest sports news each week right here on the Sports Stove podcast. And stay tuned as the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show will be kicking off shortly as well. And we're talking baseball news, fantasy baseball opinions, and advice there as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's edition of the Sports Stove podcast, live on YouTube and Facebook. And again, all those tuning in to the audio version of the podcast as well. Thank you. I hope you have a great evening and a happy new year. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.